Facebook.com/WGunslinger, Twitter @John Reinott. This is John out here for another Sports Day in the D short here. It is August 27, 2017. Did you guys witness the fight of the century last night? I'm talking about Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor. Just want to get your guys' thoughts on it. Let me know what you thought about the fight if you saw it, and if you didn't, I want to share some of my thoughts. So going into the fight, you have Floyd Mayweather, hasn't pretty much boxed in about 2 years, and Conor McGregor is the biggest guy in the UFC. I mean, everybody knows who he is. Pretty much a little while ago, Conor McGregor was collecting welfare checks, And it's a lot different when you're going from a $3 million purse in terms of winning in the UFC to, making about $150 million? It's pretty darn crazy for Conor McGregor. And I know, like I said, Floyd hasn't fought in about 2 years. But my initial thought of that fight was Conor looked pretty darn good. Especially never been able to do, never been in the boxing ring before. Yeah, the guy's been fighting all his life, just like Floyd Mayweather, but it's a different set of circumstances when you can't throw down hammer fists, use the legs, put down a guillotine chokehold, all that stuff. All the UFC guys out there know a lot more about this than I do. And in terms of my boxing knowledge, I'm not a huge historian, but I am a little bit of an enthusiast. If I were to choose between UFC and boxing, I do like the sweet science a little bit more. But it was a spectacle last night. And for a lot of us, you'd be thinking about whether these fights would actually happen. When you talk to money, he pretty much tells you that because, Conor was such a big draw, that this stuff was going to go down. And it did. And honestly, the end result of it was pretty darn good. So let me talk about a few things here. Facebook.com/WGunslinger, Twitter @John Reinott. So Friday usually had the weigh-in stuff on FS1. And, there's a lot of trash talking between both sides. It's just more of a show to get everything ready, to get everybody hyped for the fight. So none of that stuff really surprised me. But at the end of it, Conor McGregor, I think, especially going into that fight in the weigh-in, he had about 15 pounds on Floyd. And Floyd, being in his 40s already, I think he was trying to go for that little slim build. And it was a surprise to me that, listen to some of those guys in FS1. Forgive me, I don't know all their names. But a lot of them say that Floyd looked like the most out of shape that he's ever been in terms of a fight. He looked pretty good to me for being 40 years old. He looked pretty chiseled. He looked pretty set to go. And it was interesting in terms of the undercard and things that were going on. You had some of the preliminaries on Saturday on Fox. I didn't catch the initial ones on Fox. But by the time I ended up catching the fight, you had Badu Jack and someone else in one of the underparts of the cards. And that was an incredible fight. That was probably fight of the night. And honestly, Mayweather-McGregor really didn't disappoint in terms of the main event. I thought it was pretty darn good. So going into it, I don't know if you guys knew about this, but if you end up catching the fight at a friend's house or whatever you did, hopefully you had a chance to catch it. There was a little bit of a delay in terms of the TV. Some of the stuff started to flicker on the screen. I'm thinking, oh crap, something's going on. Well, apparently the servers went down in California and in one other state because there were so many people ordering the pay-per-view and wanting to watch the fight. It pretty much corrupted everything for a little bit, so Mayweather and McGregor had to hold out in order for the fight to even start. And I think Floyd might have made about $350 million in this fight, and Conor got somewhere around $150 million of that purse too. So those guys made, a huge killing on that fight, and it ended up being pretty entertaining. Floyd promised before the fight started that he was going to go in, he was going to box, he was going to go forward, and he was going to test McGregor. And McGregor, pretty much on the other end of it, he went and trained like hell for it, just like he always does, and he looked, to me, for the most part, pretty comfortable so far in the ring. Because when the fight started, and, forgive me for saying this, I know that Floyd fights all of his fights now at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, and everything is beautiful and the festivities are set. But I figure as long as the fight, if it goes closer to the 12 rounds, regardless of what McGregor was doing, you would always think that the judges, and you'd always think that Mayweather would probably have an edge in the ring as the fight goes on. He would get more points in the scorecard. But for those first 3 rounds, honestly, for Conor in those first 3 rounds, I thought he won the first 3 rounds. He came out, he was aggressive, he set up his punches. I mean, he darn near hit Mayweather more times than his last 3-4 opponents have ever even touched Mayweather. And I know McGregor was a lot bigger. He looks like Andre the Giant compared to what Mayweather was throwing out there. But he came out there with his best effort. He was trying to land power shots. He was trying to land 1, 2, 3s here and there. And for the most part, it's really hard to hit Mayweather. He's a boxing tactician. He's wonderful inside the ring. Despite any of the stuff that these guys do outside of the ring or outside of the cage, everything that Mayweather and McGregor do inside of their respective circles, you can't help but root for those guys, and you can't help but say you're watching something special. For those first 3 rounds for McGregor, he honestly landed a lot of punches. He hit Mayweather a little bit. He had a little bit of combinations, a little 1-2-3 game going on. He tried to get Mayweather against the ropes, and it was pretty interesting. The referee that was in that fight, I thought he did a pretty good job, and especially at the end of it when I was watching some of the stuff on ESPN when he had Teddy Atlas and Stephen A. Smith, Chael Sonnen, a couple other of those guys in there. They had mentioned it a little bit, especially Teddy Atlas did, that Conor McGregor, when he got a little bit of those holds, because he was kind of holding on to Floyd, and Floyd was holding on to him and thinking to conserve a little bit of energy. But it seemed like Conor McGregor was down to throw some of those hammer fists. He really didn't mean to do this kind of stuff to Floyd, but I think it was just one of those instinctive measures. And Teddy Atlas said, sometimes you got a doggy paddle, and you're doing the things that you're used to doing, because he's not a professional boxer. But I think the referee did a good job, in my opinion, of letting him get away with some of that stuff. It could potentially be dangerous because you get one of those bolo punches in the back and you're really not protected, and that could be dangerous there. But I thought that the referee did a pretty good job of that, and especially in the first 3 rounds. I thought Conor McGregor honestly looked pretty comfortable, more than anyone else had ever tried to attack Floyd. Now, as the stuff went on, and Floyd Mayweather Sr. and everyone else talked about in Money's Corner, was that they were going to let Conor throw his shots, let him get tired, and then toward the middle rounds, Mayweather was going to start to make his moves, start to throw his combinations in. He gives a sense of everything that McGregor was going to do. He was going to get tired out, and he was going to go in for the kill, so to speak, and finish the fight. And as the middle rounds progressed, even through 4, 5, and 6, I thought the scorecards were a little bit generous in terms of Mayweather in the favor. Yes, McGregor wasn't landing the same type of punches. He was throwing those little feel-out jabs just to get the little, if you even want to call them jabs, but he was throwing little feelers out there to try to test to see what Mayweather was going to do, maybe land a big shot. But Mayweather was doing a good job, as he always does, dodging, putting his gloves up, moving the shots out of the way. And you could tell, but McGregor was very active the whole time, but you could tell that he was starting to get a little tired. And essentially that strategy worked to perfection for Mayweather, just as you expect, as he moved to 50-0. But I was really impressed with the way that McGregor worked inside the ring. He was trying to move around, try to get ahead of Floyd. Yeah, there was a little shots in the clinch here and there in terms of the back like this and some of that. I know, but it was just instinctive a little bit for Conor. I don't think it was anything too over the top. Toward about round 6 and 7, you saw Mayweather. He did a little turn like this, and I think he was trying to coax McGregor into hitting him in the back of the head to try to get a little disqualification. That's some of the stuff that I think Mayweather would always do in terms of all of his fights, because he wants to try to just play his game and do what he does. Whether or not you respect all of that stuff is one thing, but like I said, in the ring, Mayweather is a master tactician. And whether or not he was trying to draw a disqualification, I know Teddy Atlas talked about it, Stephen A. Smith talked about it, Steve Levy, all those guys. Whether or not you really believe all that stuff is going on, I honestly thought that in my head. He's like, oh, you better watch out, Floyd. You don't really want to get disqualified from the ref there. Because I thought that, like I said, even though the ref did a good job of all of that in the fight, thought maybe McGregor could have got disqualified for some of those punches. So it was pretty interesting. But as the fight went forward, especially in rounds 8, 9, and 10, especially in round 9 when Mayweather really started to put those combinations together and tag Conor McGregor, you could see that in his legs, his mannerisms, his gloves and everything were a little bit low. That's when Mayweather started to notice that he was gassed. He went in, he tried to knock him out, especially in the 9th round. And to McGregor's credit, and especially everything that's going on in the UFC, I figured that guy was going to have one hell of a chin. He was going to be able to take some punches. And McGregor really did. He took some punishment in that 9th round. And in the 10th, McGregor was a little gassed, as you could already tell. He did land a lot of punches, and he was really active, but the referee stopped the fight in the 10th round, and Mayweather took it home. and he took down a really large purse in the process, and he ended up going 50-0, and he's saying that he's looking forward to go back into the Hall of Fame. And I think he's going to do that. And whether or not this is going to be his last fight, well, it'll remain to be seen, because I think if you pull that same purse to me, if you get $350 million together, I think Mayweather's only fight might, again, if he chooses to do so, he says he's retired right now, but you thought about that within the last 3 fights. But if he chooses to do so and you get $350 million purse on the line again, I think he may see a McGregor-Mayweather rematch. It's not going to be anytime soon, but I think if you get that kind of purse together, anything is possible. So that being said, how would I grade that fight? I would honestly give it an 8 out of 10. It was worth it to watch. I thought maybe the undercard fight with Badu Jack was a little bit better, because both of those guys, there wasn't a lot of clinching. It was over pretty much in the 5th round, but it was 4 rounds of toe-to-toe action in that other undercard fight. But Mayweather and McGregor, I don't know how many of you guys had to go in 10 rounds. I know Max Kellerman, he has a lot of boxing knowledge and all that, but I mentioned in First Take before that, leading up to that, he didn't say to Stephen A. Smith he didn't even think that McGregor was going to land a punch. Honestly, for McGregor, his first time boxing, again, I know it's not the same in the MMA and boxing, but he looked pretty darn good in the ring. And could I see a future for McGregor in the ring? Honestly, I could, because if you think about it this way, he's going to go back in his lane and go into the UFC. We'll see who he fights next, but McGregor, from making $3 to $5 million to making $150 million, that's a hell of a transition. So I wouldn't blame the guy if he wants to schedule a few more fights. And whether or not in Floyd's quarter, if you want to call that a 15-0, what kind of fight, whatever you want to call that, I think McGregor was pretty good competition for Floyd. And I know it looked like Floyd was probably, like he said, he's not the same guy he was 2 years ago or even 5 years ago. Floyd still looked pretty good. Not the same level he used to be, but that was good competition for him. And even Floyd said at the end of it, he said he was a hell of a competitor, he was a hell of a fighter, and he had a lot of respect for him in his stand-up game. And I don't think he's just going to throw that out there nonchalantly. And even Conor McGregor, even at the end of it, he said he wished that maybe the ref would have, let him go down and take the count, get a little bit of a breather, and continue the fight that way, because a lot of those guys in the UFC, if they're not getting knocked the hell out, they still have a feeling that they can go back into the fight and they feel that they can go ahead and win. So I can understand that to McGregor's credit in terms of being in the UFC and all that, but I really feel like he did a really good job. And McGregor, at the end of it, I think he really enjoyed his time there, and that's what I really liked about those two fighters too, is they went out there and they left it all on the line. And even Mayweather had mentioned he wanted to make up for the fans in terms of the Pacquiao fight. I think he did that. You saw that he went forward. He did take some shots, and he went and he knocked out McGregor, and he said it wouldn't go the distance, and it didn't. It did go 10 rounds. It went farther than I thought it would go, even though I'm sure all of us thought Mayweather was going to win. McGregor did a good job. And then in the end of it, I think he was pretty happy, not just with the amount of money that he made, but he was happy that he went and did that. I thought he did a good job. Dana White even went out there and said that he was proud of McGregor. And I think he has a lot to keep his head up about in terms of that fight, because he went and fought the TBE, the best ever to ever do it. Whether or not you agree with that at all, the guy's 50-0. I still think he's the greatest defensive tactician that boxing has ever seen. That was a great fight. I'm not going to sit here and suggest that if Triple G and Mayweather went on fought, maybe that would be a little bit of a different realm in terms of the boxing part of it. And nobody's going to suggest that Mayweather would last in the UFC, because McGregor honestly would decapitate Mayweather. But as far as that scene being as it goes, both of them were in the boxing ring. It was a good fight on both sides. It wasn't a clown show. It was a good spectacle. And it was really enjoyable, honestly. So what did you guys think of the fight? Facebook.com/TBUGunslinger, Twitter @JohnReinott. How did you feel McGregor showed himself in this fight? Did you think that this is Floyd's last fight? Did you guys see the fight? What did you think of it? What did you think of the post comments? And to me, I want to just make one other mention here. Because I'm not a huge MMA guy. I did have a couple of Blu-rays that were given to me when you got the UFC games on the 360 on Best Buy. You can watch some of the best of stuff. I saw Anderson Silva and Chuck Liddell and Rashad Evans and things like that. So I know it was a few years ago. BJ Penn and things like that. I mean, I respect the hell out of what those guys do. You're fighting to make a living and all that stuff like that. And same thing in the boxing room for all these guys that are coming up there, those hungry lions and all of that. I respect the hell out of what they do. I know MMA and boxing is entirely different. And it was just a lot of fun to see those two things come together. And to me, at the end of the day, for a guy that's not a huge MMA fan, I can definitely tell you, for me, that Conor McGregor has made a fan out of me. I respect what the hell everything that he did, and he showed up very darn well in that fight, and it was just a lot of fun. This is going to be John Ott signing off. Next time when we come back here on Sports in the D, I think this camera's all set up for Facebook Live. Sorry if the sound is a little bit muffled because I'm using, instead of the PS3 iToy and the XSplit broadcast, I just use the Logitech HD webcam, like the $60 webcam. I think it's going to turn out pretty good. So, but next time we're going to try to just get the script all set up here for Sports in the D. I'll find some sports topics and we'll do this on Facebook Live and see where we go off the cuff here. So thanks for joining me. This is the August 27th show, and this is McGregor Mayweather post-fight commentary. Peace out, guys.